Hello and welcome to the Primal Polar Pod, where we're demystifying the masculine and connecting you to your primal. My name is Antonio Mazzola, and today we have a guest on who has been a mentor of mine, and it's quite an honor to have them. So if you could, please introduce yourself and let us know who you are.
Yeah, so good to be here, Antonio. Thanks for having me on. I always love talking shit with you, and I look forward to diving into just conversations about men's work and whatever else. Um, but my name is Trevor Bird. I call myself a personal and professional development coach, but really there's like so much more to that than just that. I do work with a lot of men and I do work with women, and a lot of it has to do with relational healing, relationship healing. I work primarily with the internal family systems model. I'm certified in it. And ever since being introduced to it, that's just how I view the world. And for those of you that don't know what that is, there's two beliefs within the IFS models. That one, we're all made up of multiple parts. An easy way to relate to that statement is, there's a part of you that probably wants to listen to this podcast, and then there's another part of you that wants to be doing something else at the same time. So none of those parts are wrong, but they just have their own agendas. The other thing is the other belief is that all of our parts have a positive intention. So we're always looking for the gold within our behavior, even if it seems like our behavior is a bit out of whack or seems mysterious or it's hurting someone else or the impact of it is not within our integrity. But we're always looking for what is the positive intention of the part that is acting out. And when we can start to bring humanness, connection, compassion to those interactions, we can really start to heal. We can really start to heal ourselves, relationships, and all those around us. So that's a long-winded introduction to what I do, how I view who I am.
That's perfect, Trevor. No, and I've had the opportunity to work with you with, I think, kind of towards sort of the start of your IFS journey. But for those listening and maybe curious about men's work or even IFS, like, how did you get into this? Like, where did you come from, and what brought you to doing this work?
Yeah, thank you for that one. So, starting off is I was the high achiever, I guess. I was a very successful chef in my day, and I owned restaurants. I had, all the businesses, all the opportunity. You get the things, the girls, the materialistic things, and then, I had my family, and that kind of shift of like being on my own, working, doing everything, to having kids and a wife and other people that need me. My whole life kind of fell apart in that moment. And that the existential crisis walks through the door of like, why the fuck am I doing all of this? What's the point of it?
Mm-hmm.
And going from the day to day, and on the outside, it's like, oh yeah, Trevor's doing really well. He's great. He's got all this stuff. He's on TV, blah, blah, blah. But like on the inside, you're just like miserable, dying. There's something eating away at you. Something feels incomplete. Something feels like it's missing. Relationships are hard. Your marriage is hard. The relationship with your sons are hard. And that's when I was like, okay, this isn't quite working. So I got involved. My wife basically gave me an ultimatum of like, figure your shit out, because I don't want to be with this for the rest of my life. And so I got involved in a men's group. Just like an entrepreneurial group was exactly what I needed. I believe that, when you're in a dark night of the soul, or you're trying to find your way through the dark woods, the universe is going to give you what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it's painful and hard and might not seem like it. And I got given one of the most beautiful gifts of a men's group that just opened me up to, I hate what I'm doing. I should probably find something on how to live within my values. And when, your values are not named or explicitly known, you're just being dragged around by the world, which is exactly what was happening to me. And so, yeah, getting into this work was seeing the potential of the relationships being healed through my life, through kind of stepping away from achieving and being more present with my family and kids and wife. Like, I want this message to be shared with the world. And then I just started getting trained in it. I started taking tons of trainings and just getting well versed in how to navigate human issues. And because I have a lot of messes in my life, I like to say my mess is my message. And I believe that a lot of people are caught in that hamster wheel of achievement. If I have this or if I get this, then I'll feel a certain way, which is the biggest lie that culture and society has ever told us.
So what, like on that note, what did you used to tell yourself? Like, what was the story? Because I mean, I know you, and maybe not everyone knows, but you were like a super successful chef. You had your own restaurant, or maybe more than one. I'm not sure actually on that one, but like, what was it for you? What was like that pinnacle of success? Like, what were you striving for?
Yeah, I mean, I told myself, you idolize as like a chef's, if I'm looking at through the egotistical mind of a chef, it's a very narrow vision, right? Like we have our blinders on and it's kind of, we're just looking straight ahead. And, open more restaurants, get more money, get more success, get more fame, and everything is going to work out. That's the thing. But then you start opening restaurants and then you're just doing it to, have more full-time jobs and then more employees and then more headaches and then more scaling. And then it was just like, the whole business was just like, this does not align with who I want to be and how I want to live my life. And I told myself the more abundance financially and materialistically that I had, then I will be happy and free and have everything that I want, which is, that's the spiritual journey of a human, is realizing that doesn't happen because you get it all and shit still sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask you a kind of a harder question on that? And you can tell me to fuck off, but did you ever look at or reflect on that time in your life and see maybe what you were kind of running from or trying to distract yourself from, like by getting all that, or is that purely just goal driven?
No, man. Like, yeah, that's if you want to start to drop into, I appreciate that question because I feel like now we start to drop into the soul a little bit and drop into the depths of the human experience because, I'm going to revert this back to IFS concepts, internal family system concepts, and how humans are kind of wired within that concept. So, yeah, my protectors, that wanted to steer away from my vulnerability were pushing that bus. They were saying, do more, do it better, do it harder, be more than, because if you don't, you're going to lose everything. You're going to be a piece of shit. You're going to be worthless. Nobody's going to love you. And so that's the external validation. You're chasing the rewards, you're chasing all the things, that I'm avoiding a lot of my pain. And, I grew up in an absolutely horrible experience. My parents got divorced really young. They were both addicts, a lot of abuse, a lot of really hurtful things. If you've ever heard of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, the ACE survey, kind of gives you an idea of like, what's your life expectancy and what's it like to be caught up in that. And like I'm a 10 out of 10. There's check every box on that survey. So I encourage your listeners to just go look at that list. And the more boxes you check off, kind of the more fragmented your system becomes. The more challenging it is to have healthy adult relationships and relate to people in a healthy way. And, I developed these mechanisms, these strategies of avoiding my pain of, in a sense, I have a lot of appreciation for it because it did save my life. Like I was a hair away from being homeless and an addict,
okay.
But being raised by addicts, I was recently discussing this with my wife, like scared me away from that. Like, these people are idiots. I don't want to be anything like that. I need to get as far away from this as possible. And so I found kitchens. We one of our basic core needs as a human is the need to belong, like our attachment. We need to feel good with each other. And when I found kitchens, it was like the harder you work, the less you complain, the more perfect you are, the more like good job. Yeah, stick around. Yeah, we want you. You want this job? You want a promotion? Great. And then you just start climbing the ladder based on like, I feel appreciated. And it's a pretty toxic culture in a lot of senses. There's a lot of emotional abuse. There's a lot of pushing that goes on. And it really worked for me up until it didn't. Just like anybody, right? We're all evolving. We're all figuring it out.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, the external validation resonates with me huge. And it's something that I brought up before on here and I'll bring up continuously, but having no self-worth of my own or developed that self-esteem at a certain age. Similarly, my parents, weren't addicts, but divorced when I was young, and never talked and never interacted. So I became like just a shadow to them, because they couldn't interact with each other. So then I couldn't interact about one of them to each other. So yeah, I was always, I understand, like, looking for approval in all the wrong places except with myself. Like I couldn't accept myself because my parents couldn't accept half of me on either side. So it was like, who the fuck was I? But yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I swear I had a question in there, but yeah, I don't know. I lost it on that.
Well, when you say that, like, my parents couldn't accept me, or they could only accept half of me, I can really feel the weight of that. And that sounds really true for myself as well, where, my parents were too wrapped up in their own shit, where I wasn't even a thing in their life. Like, I was a nuisance. I was, they don't pay attention to Trevor. Like, my mom will always say she loved me, and I believe her. She absolutely does and did. And there's a lot of like backhanded things that come along with that. Our parents are simultaneously giving us what we need to live and wounds that will stay with us forever.
Yeah.
And so it's very natural to have parts of ourselves that love our parents and parts of ourselves that hate our parents. And that's kind of an interesting dichotomy to be in.
So that being said, have you, like, at this point, have you been able to reconcile any kind of relationship with your parents, or like, what does that look like today?
Yeah, it's so good, Antonio. And I don't, like, when you say that, there's like, I think we could just talk about this for the rest of the podcast, to be honest, because there's kind of two sides to the coin of that. I can feel emotion coming up, because there's the mother side and the father side, right? And there's the mother wound and the father wound.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and part of the reason of why I do this work so much is because of my father. Not to mention just like growing up in that scenario of all the challenges of sexual abuse, of emotional abuse, of neglect, of all of it. But I didn't talk to my dad for 25 years.
Man.
And I got a call 3 years ago that he passed away. And like, yeah, this, like, I cannot tell this story without shedding a tear. It's just so sad. I tell this story a lot, and it never ceases to hit different. It's always the same. And my dad, when he died, I just didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, hey, it's all good. And my brother was the one that told me, and he said, hey, reach out to his caregiver. And when I called his caregiver, she just said, like, I'm so sorry for your loss, because your father was such a good man.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, growing up with an addict of a father that you hate really puts like one side to the whole thing, where, you paint them as a villain, as a bad person. Yeah, I hear stories about him from my grapevine and through my family of how much of a terrible person he is. And that kind of goes back to that, like, belief within IFS of, we're all made up of multiple parts, and we have parts that don't know how to be in relationship and parts that hold on to a lot of shame. And she shared with me, like, your dad loved you so much. Like, he followed your career. Yeah, he like saved all your clippings from the newspaper. And I just never reached out to him, or never knew what it would have been like to have a father. And, his shame kept him from reaching out to me. And I think that's one of the saddest affairs within a human, is that our shame keeps us so disconnected and can keep us so isolated, when I would have rather had a father that had mistakes and that was imperfect than I had no father at all. And part of my why is to help people heal their shame and their blocks within human connection, so that they can have a life that they desire and a life that they want to live, because I believe the quality of our relationships is in direct relation to the quality of our life. And if we know how to be in relationship well, we will live a happy, fulfilled life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that comes along with that. So going back to your original question, like, doing a lot of work internal work and spiritual work for the further reaches, if some people are into this, you know, my father does show up as a spirit guide now, and I believe that he works through me and helps me do this work with men holding on to pain, and women as well. But you know, that's definitely something that I hold true, and you know, I'm not mad at my father, and I can truly say that I have fully healed. And I remember the session at which the healing happened. And it was very psychedelic. I was not on psychedelics, but it was very psychedelic. And he came in and like, yeah, man, he rescued me as a little boy. And said he was sorry for everything that he put me through. And that was it. Like he's a guiding light in my life now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, man. That's really powerful and beautiful. Just take a breath there. I maybe want to circle around, and if you're okay, continuing kind of down this vein, like how are you able to like father yourself through this time? Because I mean, you never got that reconciliation until after the fact. So like how did that look for you, and like when did you realize that that's something you needed to take on?
Yeah, another fantastic question, Antonio. If we don't have strong fathers or mentors in our life, we don't know how to father ourselves. And that's why I really hold true to like having a solid men's group, a compassionate group of men that care about you, that will challenge you, that will be there for you, that will not criticize you, that will not shame you or judge you, but support you on your journey. You know, when you are held in that space and you see how other men can support that healing, you then start to open yourself to the tools to be able to do that for yourself. You can start to let go of your own judgments, your own criticism. You know, we all have parts of ourselves, and especially for men, parts of ourselves that we hate, that we don't like. We look at our body, we say, oh, like my tire, whatever it is, like I'm fat, I'm this and that. It's like we have inner critics, right? And we know when we can see ourselves through the eyes of another man, like that is like essential to healing our father wound, you know, essential to healing that relationship, where then we can start to hold that compassionate energy towards ourselves. And I believe that healing of the world and healing of internal relationships as well as external relationships is met with compassion. So, and I understand that a lot of guys hear that and they're like, no, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, you know, if I heard myself talking about this like 20 years ago, I'd tell myself to fuck off. Right. Yeah. Like, so it's a journey, right? Like it's something that you have to go down, and the next level of the journey cannot exist without the level before. So, you know, wherever we're at is where we're at, and learning to be accepting of ourselves and our humanness and our messiness and mistakes is one of the hardest things to do as a human. We're gonna fuck up. Yeah. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make ruptures in relationships. We're going to get into conflict. You know, we're going to be human. We're not more than human. We're not godlike and never make mistakes. And we're not less than. We're not pieces of shit. And people can go on either end of that spectrum at any point in their day, in their relationships or whatever. And so how do we maintain that balance? And I always take it back to compassion, understanding, acceptance.
I love that, man. And I'd say, you know, I think having that compassion and acceptance and understanding for ourselves is that kind of what you're alluding to, like, or to everyone else, or just in general?
Yeah, and that ties back into how do we repair it ourselves? It's like, you know, we go into like shame, right? Where, you know, there's an easy way to explain this, because shame is a pretty intense topic. You have toxic shame and healthy shame. Toxic shame is I made a mistake, or something bad happened, or this thing is happening and I'm bad because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I now because I'm bad because of this, I need to isolate. I need to stay away from people. I need to go drink. I need to bury my shame in alcohol, in drugs, and porn, and whatever it is. Like choose your poison.
Yeah.
And then there's healthy shame where something bad happened. I made a transgression or like hurt someone else, or the situation is happening, and I know this, but I can address it. I can speak for it. I can say, "Hey, I'm not proud of what I did." I can reconnect. And so we can kind of look at it as like a signpost. When we feel shame, it's like, all right, there's the fork in the road. What do we do? Are we going to destroy ourselves, or are we going to go in for a connection? And listen, there's no judgment, because like I still today, will be like, oh, I don't want to feel that. I'm going to go, do something else. Like I'm going to go avoid this, and it's like, and the thing I would say though is that I don't do that for months at a time anymore. Now it's like 15 minutes and I'm like, no, I'm totally avoiding this. All right. Listen, I'm really sorry. I did not mean, like my time window of this stuff is like getting smaller and smaller. And it's not about perfection and never hurting anyone or never transgressing anyone or never making mistakes. It's just about how do you move through it? How do you move with it and not let it define you?
No, really, I like that. That's I think that's the grace needed, and anyone getting into this work needs to hear that, because it's like, you're not going to be fucking perfect. I know when I was getting into this, it was always like, I need to do X, Y, and Z or else I'm not doing it. And of course I messed up all the time, but can I ask you like a behind the scenes kind of question with the work you do?
Please.
So let's say you're working with somebody and like something really resonates or triggers in you. Like how often does that happen, and how do you work through that? Like, go ahead.
Awesome question. I love that. And that speaks so true to like one of the core things within IFS is, clinician parts, therapist parts, coach parts. And that's our parts that get activated when sitting with someone else. Because we are human, we're going to resonate, we're going to judge, we are going to criticize, we are going to have parts of us that come up in a relationship, and in a coaching relationship on my end. There's after having many instances like that, there are times when a client will say something and it's like, okay, that's interesting. And it's like, look, I just need a second just to like, I'm noticing some activation, and I just want to be with that. And now I can do that. And sometimes I need consultation on it. So if there is, if they're telling me about something and I notice like a pretty big response in my system, I take that to my work. Like I will take that into my sessions to work through, to understand what's going on there, because all of our reactivity and all of our emotional kind of like coming out, and that's just a sign to like, there's something there. We call them a trailhead. It's a trailhead into something deeper. And so I know a lot of times, like I'll shed tears with my clients if they're telling me something super deep and like, it's hitting me, like, man. And also there's something really powerful in that about attuning with your client and resonating with your client, because a lot of times, especially with guys, they just tell a story. They're like, oh yeah, I was young and I used to get raped all the time and da 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 da. And they're just like talking from a very disassociated space. And as they're talking, like my heart is like, holy shit. I just need a second. Like I'm really feeling this right now. Like I feel like pretty emotional. And they'll be like, it'll stop them a bit. And it's like, how is it for you to see my emotions?
Is it? So do you find that puts like almost holds a mirror back to them? Be like, maybe I should be feeling something right now instead of just breezing past this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like when because like the capacity of our community might not be able to hold the pain that's underneath that. When I used to talk about, when I grew up, it's like, I lost my virginity to an escort, like whatever, ha ha ha, super funny, but there's a lot of fucking pain underneath that. And when you can, when I actually started to not laugh about it, I was actually telling a friend about it who was in my men's group, and I was making light of my childhood situation, and I was laughing, and he goes, "Hey man, like, that's not funny. Are you okay?" And I was just, that stopped me in my tracks, where I was like, huh, that's not funny. And then I started to speak my story aloud, and it started to hit different. Like, I started getting crazy emotional about it. Like, when I started talking about the environment that I grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
there, like, deep, deep grief. I remember I went to see a a uh, a seminar, a talk on like people going through hardships, and there was three guys that were talking, and they talked, and I was like, those are not hardships. Like, like my judgmental parts, like those, like I cannot relate to these things. One guy's like, I couldn't get into the Olympics. I'm like, that does not resonate with me.
That's not for me. Yeah.
And I was like, I got a story. And so I was like, hey, I'm gonna like get up there and tell my story because I think that's like pretty deep. And I remember I wrote out my story and I began to talk. I just wrote it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to read it out loud. And I fell apart. Like,
Yeah.
I cried for 4 hours, bawled. And I was like I have never acknowledged the pain that I went through. And I was probably 29 at the time when that happened. And like really acknowledging the amount that I was avoiding all of that when you're asking like what was my strategy of like working so much, like I was starting to kind of relax a little bit because I was starting to get the safety and I wasn't living in survival mode. And yeah, that just broke me, man. And
Yeah.
that was kind of like that was it.
I can imagine really saying it out loud and being seen, you know what I mean, by like a whole bunch of people about it would be like a really intense experience. And that makes sense, you know, crying for 4 hours about it. I did want to ask, was there like a man or person, doesn't have to be a man, that stood out as like, oh, I want to be like that person, like before you really got into this?
Yeah, well, you know, because I was working a ton. I was working 7 days a week, like 18 hours a day, like 30-day stretches weren't out of the ordinary. Like, I was working my ass off, and I was just like, yep, this is how life is.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the men's group, it was actually Connor Beaton with Man Talks. There was like a small, intimate group of guys, and I started seeing kind of like, I was in a year program with Man Talks. That was like a little group, and by the fourth meeting, because we met quarterly, I like, Connor was like, he helped me through a lot. I worked with him one-on-one. I was in his groups because I saw the potential that was there, and I saw the life that he was building, and I was like, man, like I want to, like, I see there's another possibility here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could live a good quality life without fucking destroying myself in work. And that was the first time where like I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And there's a whole bunch of other, you know, there's a garbage truck full of stuff that comes along with that. But I would say Connor was a huge inspiration for me.
Awesome.
Where I saw him, like, what he was building. And it's not to say that's like I want to do exactly that, but it was like, it was inspiring work. It was meaningful. I was seeing the benefits that I was getting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely believe that like the work that I've done on myself can benefit a lot of other men because I fucking know it. Like, I know that pain. I
Yeah.
know what it's like. And like, oh, my deepest desire is to just help other men see their worth, see their power, you know, see the quality of relationships that they're capable of having and might not know is possible.
I fucking love that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm grateful because I received some of that, so I appreciate that you took that step.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. No, thank you. So part of what I do with Primal Polar Bear Adventures is something I call rewilding, and that's taking men out on an initiative, like initiation type retreat out in the wild, and really connecting them with nature. But a big part of that is building or reconnecting a relationship with their boy. And usually it's that hurt little boy who didn't get to, you know, didn't get the time or didn't get what they needed. So I guess the question then stems into what what is your relationship with that little boy who was hurt and abused and abandoned, and like how is that, have you developed a relationship with that and as like a grown man?
Yeah, I mean first, I've done a retreat with you, and I know how powerful those things are. I still don't have any social media on my phone, thanks to you, which is amazing, man. That was like the calling I needed in life to just like realign some things.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I believe that, within all of these parts of us, there's always that inner child. You could call it inner child work or whatever, but I mean, it's all parts work. And when we can connect with those parts of us holding that pain, generally it is the younger parts of us from our past, the ones that were not given what they needed. They weren't attuned to, they were brushed aside, they were criticized, they were judged, they were isolated. They hold shame, and I believe that part of the work that we do as men in healing is revisiting those parts of ourselves and getting them out of the basement, getting them out of the isolation, and welcoming them back into our system. And I think the things that you do, Antonio, is like there's an intermediate connection there that happens with nature, where yes, I, Trevor, have this wise mind that can help that little boy, but nature can help me help that little boy. And because I don't believe that as humans we have the strength to metabolize all of the shit that we're given, and we need a bigger container to help that. And so when we connect out in the middle of nowhere, like, fuck, I've never been that deep in nature, where there is nothing to tether to except yourself and the universe that be, that can allow that vertical drop into that boy and into the deeper parts of ourselves, where we can get like true deep healing done.
Awesome. I mean, thank you. I wasn't necessarily going to boast. It was more to talk about the relationship with the boy, but I appreciate that. Trying to think what
can I just share one more thing that comes up
please,
in that?
please, go ahead. Sorry.
The relationship outwardly to something bigger than us. It's important to anchor in that, because the more, I'm picturing like the crown of my head, the more I can anchor into the universe, the more I can anchor into the depth of my soul. And so the more of a relationship that we can cultivate, and I'm still learning this, it's a practice. It's like my teacher, the more that we can create that relationship with nature, the more we can create that relationship with ourselves. It goes up and down. It goes in and out. It's like it permeates everything. So, healing the relationship with that boy is like if anybody's listening to this, like YouTube inner child meditation. I'm sure I have some really great ones. I've recorded great ones. I've listened to great ones. And if you just find one, like do one and just see what comes up. I remember the first time I did like a simple inner child meditation, I was like a puddle on the floor. I was like, oh my God, like that's what he looks like right now. Yeah. And you start to realize the disconnection you have with yourself. Like you start to realize, like, I don't know you. I don't know where you're at. I have never like talked to you or been with you before. And so.
No, that resonates. I've actually only done one, connecting with my boy. And yeah, I was a mess for like 45 minutes. Like I couldn't breathe without crying. So it was pretty awesome, pretty powerful experience for me. Yeah, would recommend that for everybody just to see, because why not? So I was thinking, when you were talking about getting into the men's groups, I think because of my own experience, I want to ask guys, like, why not therapy? And then what kind of resistance was there, or if any, from people in your family towards like the men's group side of life?
Well, what comes up for me when you ask that question is the relationship with my mom, because when I started looking at this shit, I started to see the behaviors that my mom was doing and how I was enmeshed with her and how I was caught up in that relationship. And so from doing this conscious relational work, You can call it therapy, you can call it conscious relational work, you can call it whatever, personal development, professional development, whatever you want. Yeah, things get stirred up. You know, who you are is going to be different who you're going to be in 6 months to a year to 10 years in doing this work. And so the qualities of your relationships shift and change. And my mom didn't like that. You know, I was always my mom's little boy, and I didn't have any needs, or I didn't have any boundaries, and my mom could just do whatever she wanted whenever she wanted. And when I kind of got caught up in that, I was like, wait a minute, like, you know, I believe No More Mr. Nice Guy. I'm sure a lot of people read that book. It's probably the shortest, longest book you'll ever read in your life.
Yeah.
There's a concept in there that like still rings true today to you know, I carry it with me everywhere, and with many men that I work with, is the metaphorical umbilical cord. Like, you have not cut that umbilical cord. And I've noticed that like it happens a lot with men between like 30 and 45. We are still attached to our mother, and in our relationship with our spouses, like a lot of us still, like if we suffer from this, if we have this mother wound, we're still orienting towards our mother before our spouse. So it's like, is my mom okay? Like, do I have to meet my mom's needs before I meet my spouse's needs, which creates a lot of resentment, a lot of disconnection, a lot of bullshit in a relationship, right? So the resistance is, it's like, I'm probably going to start setting boundaries, and you're not going to like that, because nobody likes a new way of being, right? There's change and shifts, and there's a change in the dynamic of the relationship. So that can really put people up. And I think it's important, like, if you're not in the work or haven't done the work, like, you don't know this stuff. And that's no judgment at all, but it's just like, you don't know the implications of it. You know, it's like, who am I if I didn't have this like under-seating resentment towards the world? Who am I if I didn't carry around this deep sadness that I've been carrying my whole life, or depression? If we could alleviate that, who would you be? Fuck, you change a lot. And then the people around you say, whoa, who's this person?
Oh yeah.
This isn't who I know. Come back here, you depressed person. Let me try to pull you back into this.
So how much of that resistance to even looking at ourselves is fear-based, do you think? Like comfort and fear-based?
Let me sit with that for 1 second.
Yeah.
The way that our systems are organized is that we're always going to have a layer of armor, resistance, and shielding. And so when I do this work, and within IFS, is that we're always working with the resistance. You know, the first question with a new client, with an intake call or anything, is like, you know, why don't you want to be here? Like, great, you're telling me why you want to be here. Tell me why you don't want to be here. That's what I want to hear. Because it's like, that's the chipping away of the resistance, of the armor, of the like, I don't want to change, because change is hard. And if you think about it, I mean, I'm sure everybody's had a job or worked in a team or whatever. Like, whenever you introduce change to a big team, everybody's like, whoa, no fucking way, we're not changing anything. Like, there's always going to be pushback. So we're always looking for the resistance. We're always looking to just like hang out in the space of like, I don't want to do this. And that's where the gold is. That's where like because once you start to like get those parts on board, and you get the team, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I see this going to be a good thing. Instead of just trying to like get in there and heal it on your own and do everything, you now have like this like cohesive inner team that's like, okay, let's go get, little Antonio out of that basement. Let's go rescue him. Let's do this. We're all on board, and then that translates to sustainable, long-lasting changes in how you show up in relationship in the world.
I love that, man. I like the analogies and the visualizations.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I'll ask you this hard question. You're not going to hurt my feelings, but so you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like there's other things you'd rather be doing than listening to this. So if you want to share with people, what would you rather be doing than interviewing with me right now, or before, when you were getting on this?
My kids are out of school, and I can hear them, and I don't know what they're doing, and I'm so curious, and I want to go like, what are you guys doing? Like, can I come hang out? Like, that's what this other part's doing right now. And I know they have something going on, so I'm also curious. Like, they should be at this thing, but they're not there, so I want to go like, like, babe, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Like, that's what parts are curious about. And I'm also really enjoying this conversation. So,
No, absolutely.
yeah.
No, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on and giving the time. I could talk to you for hours. So if people want to work with you or reach out and contact you, what's the best way to do that? How do they find you?
Yeah, I mean, you could Google my name. You could trevorbird.com, social media, _Trevor Bird. Making sense of inner conflict is kind of my tagline, and I think my website might even be called that. I can't remember, but if you type in Trevor Bird, making sense of inner conflict, tons of stuff will come up. And I can't believe I didn't like tag that in this conversation, but like, the way that I approach the work, it's like everybody has an inner conflict. Where there's a yes, there's a no. Where there's like a you should, there's always like a maybe I shouldn't. And, these two sides are basically just misunderstood. And the more that we can get them in relationship with each other and seeing each other, we make sense of it. And then you can find a lot of relief in that, where it's like, oh, it's not that bad.
Awesome. I like it. Well, thank you. Yeah, reach out to find him. I'll speak from my own experience. Life-changing. Couldn't recommend Trevor enough to just help you kind of unfuck yourself. So sorry if that's not the endorsement you're looking for, but thank you everyone for listening, and be well.
Thank you, Antonio.